Hello folks, whoa, this is Miguel from Embargo Man. So, now, if you want to say anything about it, that I have seen some YouTube videos about Koreans ripping off Japanese products and so on, right? So, what happened is that some of you audiences out there are looking for something interesting on this YouTube channel. So what happened around there, like the with this TJF project, when I see a video about why would they have to criticize about, even the Chinese do it too, but why do they have to criticize Korea, most likely South Korea, for ripping off Japanese products or Japanese media or whatever, right? So, I mean, there comes to the conclusion where this goes out of all things is okay. I understand it, and then and then I saw they're ripping off an iPhone. I mean, okay, you have Samsung Galaxy ripping off iPhone, and I have done a video right here in this channel before. But if I have done a video right here in this channel before, I mean, it was most obviously when YouTube have its own editor, right? So what's going to happen is, yes, I'm gonna say people in any country could rip off from others. They could rip off. I mean, like the most common known thing nowadays is like the Chinese are ripping off everybody. They go and knock off products. They knock off this product. They knock off this. They rip off that. They rip off this. All right, and then the Japanese folks come and saying, "Oh, look, Koreans are ripping off products too." They saying they're gonna ripping off Japanese products. The vehicle that I'm going to talk about, is not that it is ripping off a product, right? So before, I'm gonna tell you about the history of this company. It was called Daewoo. Daewoo Motors. This company are the ones involved in releasing the Pontiac Le Mans. All right, what is a Pontiac Le Mans? All right, so it's a GM car made by what is now called, GM Korea. Daewoo. All right, so they come up with this car, and then they come and were selling Daewoo on their own under the brand Daewoo. This is kind of what else they're ripping off to some German car models or whatever. Anyway they are. You're probably right. Some of you guys are blaming Koreans for ripping off products, not just Japanese products, but then the US also. I heard about the American rip-offs of European cars. Yeah, there was a car from Chrysler called the 300. It is a rip-off of a Bentley, a rip-off of a Phantom. So that means what it is that I say about everybody copying each other. I'm talking about, Korean ripping off Japanese products, but this is one that I'm talking about. It has already been ripped off. All right, it's a product that has been ripped off from a RAV4. All right, it's been ripped off from a RAV4, and the funny thing is that they sell it in Australia as a Holden. They sell it in Europe as an Oka, or whatever it is. Here in the United States of America, it is sold as a Buick Encore. So what it is because about GM Korea, like it's like, imagine Daewoo tried to sell their brand in the United States and they couldn't sell it. Well, something went bad, so General Motors took General Motors took Daewoo. Daewoo is failing as a conglomerate or something like that, and every division has been sold out, from electronics, whichever is sold, and now could be Philips or whatever, and Daewoo Motors has become GM Korea, General Motors Korea, right? So what it is that this car that had been ripped off, it's funny to say how the heck they've been selling it as different brands, and it's been never. I think it's sold out as some Chevrolet in there. Yeah, probably it's sold as a Chevrolet in South Korea, but not as a Buick. What it is to selling this Buick Encore, it would be, I guess it would be another could be selling along with another Rolls Royce ripoff. All right, so I'm not talking about the Chinese ripping off Rolls Royce, but I'm telling about what is gonna be next to my video would be a Ghost ripoff, right? So what a Ghost ripoff might be is like what's happened with these trade wars between Japan and South Korea. What would they need? Selling a Genesis? Well, it would be technically would be Daewoo's answer to Hyundai's Genesis, would be a brand that has been existed forever. A brand that has been in the luxury car business forever, and has been part of General Motors since 1912. Now that it's GM Korea, technically General Motors Korea, to compete with themselves, they have to have a car that you have to rip off. GM Korea should have to rip off from the second generation Rolls Royce Ghost to sell a car. Just have a little bit in aerodynamic, ripping off from a Lexus and ripping off from a Rolls Royce, right? So right there you have a genuine Rolls Royce ripoff coming from GM Korea. But we're not talking about that one. The one that we're talking about is that ripoff from a RAV4 or something like that. Like the blueprint has already been there. It's already been there because once they sold it as an Opel in Europe, and then that second generation in there is no longer built by GM Korea, it's built in France now. Then you have another car in that line to fit in. You already been having to be sold as a Holden is in Australia, right? So it's already been sold partly in England as a Vauxhall, but then sold as a Buick here in the United States. But my sister had that car, the Encore, right? So why not selling it in South Korea as a Cadillac? So I have been looking this page, most likely, and liking joining a group related to anything Cadillac, right? So Cadillac in that stand would be like, okay, like there's no no Cadillac sold in South Korea that is built within their home market. No, it's not. It's kind of ridiculous not to just import some Cadillacs that are made in China, but have GM in South Korea make a Cadillac. But this one has already been sold as a Buick in here in the United States. It's an Encore, right? So it was sold under different names, right? So This has been sold as an Opel, right? So the first generation Opel, Oka or something like that. It has been already been sold as a Vauxhall. It has already been sold as a Holden in Australia. It's already been sold here in the United States as a Buick Encore, but not sold in South Korea as it is. Or yeah, they already sold it, but like a cheaper, watered down version would be like Trax or something like that, right? In there, yes, some kind of Chevy model, but not as like what it is like a Buick Encore. Yeah, but it would be sold as a Cadillac to say with the witness the same like what they did. It's a really nice car. Like Buicks are like really nice car. I've never practiced, but that's what like my first hands on to have well practice in driving. So it was a Buick. It was a Sabre from '83. Those are made in America, but this is a Korean made car that I'm talking about, and it's not going to be sold as a Buick in South Korea. It's going to be sold in South Korea as a Cadillac, and it's going to be called the HY5. Okay, the name came into my head. The HY5 is like I'm saying, look, if you're gonna call a name of a car, when people have girl names on cars like Mercedes Benz and like they have for Carl Benz one like name after what, as a niece or something like that. Like there's obvious Julia and for Alfa Romeo and HY. What I'm thinking is HY is just initials of a K-pop star. I have this initials to be calling a car after a K-pop star. I mean, I was just still thinking Psy. Psy might just do that for a commercial to have that car promoted, even for a Super Bowl commercial, if they're gonna sell that car as a Cadillac in North America, as they sold it as a Buick. So what it is that the blueprint is there, is exported. They have one that's made for the Chinese market in China, but it's gonna be, I know it's not sold in China anymore, sold in the United States, but they have the GX1 or whatever it is, but it's gonna be sold as an HY5, and it's gonna be sold along with with another car that is ripping off a Rolls Royce Ghost. The second generation Rolls Royce Ghost to be, that is okay. That's involved with GM Korea ripping off a Rolls Royce, right? So and sell it like a Cadillac, and I add the name for it. I just call it the Grand Deluxe. Just saying Grand Deluxe. Give them hell on Lexus with a Korean variant that looks like a Rolls Royce Ghost, right? So that one, this one I'm talking about, that is the HY that's been ripped off of RAV4 or whatever it is like saying you have this vehicle. But that's just for the Japanese audience that I know that is then ripping off from a RAV4 for the Japanese audience, because they always like to blame about Koreans ripping off Japanese products. Okay, this one that is ripped off from the Japanese products for the Japanese audience going to be along with another car that has been ripping off from a car that for a more expensive brand that's from England that is called Rolls Royce. But the Ghost, all right, the Ghost with the pinnings of another Japanese model sold under the Lexus name brand, right? So that in all, what I'm saying is that the HY5, with the name of the HY5 is like, because I'm seeing Psy is PSY, the Gangnam Style, along with Hyuna. All right, HY stands for Hyuna. All right, so they just name Cadillac with the CX5 or whatever, but the HY5 is nothing more than the Buick Encore sold as a Cadillac, but with more of a wood panel and whatever. This is not a freaking Cinerama or something like that. No, this is more like this odd thing of this, it's more plushy, more luxurious or something like that. The inside is like, probably similar to an Encore, and outside similar to an Encore, but with the wooden trim in the dashboard, and making more like a luxury car or something like that, luxury SUV, right? So that, put it in mind, is sold as a Cadillac, right? So this thing of a Cadillac, a Cadillac based on a Buick Encore, would be more or less that it would be the first time that an Encore be sold in South Korea, but as a Cadillac. I mean, this would be the first of the first, or what it would technically would be one of these odd things about, if Daewoo were to be existed, Daewoo would have the answer to Hyundai's Genesis, with a brand that have been existed forever, that have been existed for 100 and something years under the GM brand known as Cadillac, right? So that's it, because Daewoo now is like General Motors Korea, right? So that is in Buick in South Korea, but the car is gonna be built for the South Korean market first. It would be sold for the South Korean market, and then after it was sold for the South Korean market, then it will come to the United States along with the Rolls Royce ripoff, and then you have Psy, and then playing Gangnam Style with Hyuna in there. That's why the HY5 is the nature of HY, like HY5, stands. Well, what is it? What's the HY? What stands for Hyuna? Like, Hyuna's born in Korea. The HY5 is built in Korea. I mean, it's built in General Motors Korea, but then what it is to sell the HY5 in Korea first, in South Korea first, it would be a refreshing start to see that this car sold as a Buick Encore in North America and whatnot, and other parts where they sell the Buick brand, will be sold in South Korea under the Cadillac nameplate, and probably would they have dedication of how they gonna do it as a Cadillac, if they gonna like probably surpass the craftsmanship of their North American made counterparts. I mean, it would be like a win-win situation, right? So there you go, the HY5. Then bring it back to the North American market, and then you have a Super Bowl commercial with Psy in it, playing the famous Gangnam Style song, dancing around along with the sedan that would be called that I have name call it the Grand Deluxe, just to like say this is like freaking having ripped off even the interior of a Rolls Royce, along with that HY5. The HY5 would be like, oh look, that's the HY5. That's a Cadillac. It's so totally. It's basically just the same Buick Encore, The only thing difference is more upscale, more wooden trim, and all this commodities make it feel a little bit different. But it's like a Cadillac, right? It's just like Buick is here, Cadillac is the upper class there. Is the like the Mac Daddy of luxury cars, so in the General Motors. And then I would say we ever buy a Cadillac, HY5 if it comes to the United States. But if you were living in South Korea, will you buy an HY5? Even GM Korea wasn't. Would you sell the HY5 to be the first Cadillac to be homegrown for the South Korean market and then sell it to the consumers in South Korea? Then it would be a possibly yes in a heartbeat, along with another car that you have to design and see what is the pinnings of a Lexus LS with all the design and commodities to the Rolls Royce Ghost. You know what it is. You copy and paste and sell it as another name, as what TJF project, the people who just bash Korea in there. Look, it's a GM Korea. What they does is what they do. They need to get the design from a Rolls Royce Ghost with a little bit of the aerodynamic design of a Lexus LS or something like that. Just copy it and paste it, sell like a Cadillac, and here we go again. But for that one, the HY, so it's already been copied from a RAV4. If you are TJF, I already know the TJF project. If you know of this, yeah. But for everybody else, like the besides TJF project, who bashes Korea for ripping off Japanese products and then what it is that what would be that to sell the car first in South Korea. I mean, it's an SUV first in South Korea. It would be like a Buick. But then, yeah, it would be the basic, the one that would be, but they'll be more luxurious or something. Would be called DX. The DX is what the one that is gonna come here, because DX stands for deluxe. The one that comes here is it's gonna be called HY5. The HY5 DX is the HY5 that is gonna be sold here. The HY5 that is sold in South Korea is just have the same pinnings of a Buick Encore, but it's just sold as a Cadillac in South Korea. But the ones we get here, it's more like an upper scale or something like that, wooden trim, whatever it is. HY5 DX will be sold as an HY5. So, I mean, what do you think of selling it of a Cadillac HY5? The first Cadillac to be built in South Korea, sold in the United States, or one of the Cadillacs that is a homegrown Cadillac for the South Korean market, not imported from the United States for the South Korean market, but homegrown for the South Korean market, and probably buy it. I bet the people in South Korea could buy it in a heartbeat. Besides, you having a Genesis competitor over there, right? So Genesis is like the highest mark of Hyundai, what Cadillac is for General Motors. But by having the HY5, it would be the equivalent to have a competitor in South Korea against the Genesis, but in a small SUV. And then bringing it in here into the United States, all you're gonna have is one of these first Asian-made Cadillacs that has the same pinnings and blueprint as a Buick Encore, but sold in the United States within the Cadillac line. Well, that the XY5 would be sold in South Korea and sold in America? Well, the Buick Encore sold here because it's only for to export to the United States. Well, South Korea will sell the Buick Encore as an Cadillac XY5. So write me in the comments and tell me about it, and tell me what would you think about the Cadillac XY5, or what I said in mine, the Korean version of the Buick Encore. Goodbye, peace out, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel.